Welcome to the big show. It's Starbase 80, and I'm John Weber, one of your hosts. Let's bring on the best damn co-host and XO in the history of all the Starfleets. Oh my God! Hang on.
I am just so tired, Captain. I lost an hour last night. It's a real thing. Oh my God. What's up?
We are spring ahead here. Daylight savings I think it's over. I think that's official. It is over.
Started now.
We started? Oh boy, I have no idea how this works.
Because we were standard time, now we're daylight time. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. Yeah. Daylight time. Because we lost an hour. I'm feeling it. Yeah. Let's bring our guest on for the week. Good friend of the show, very funny man. Craig Lubin is with us.
Apologize, everybody, for the portraits and being late. It's all my fault. I hotwired this phone to work today. So,
well, first off, we are so lucky that you're like MacGyver when it comes to putting together things like this, because you did a heck of a job getting in here. I was trying a couple of new technical things today, Ethernet instead of Wi-Fi. And then while the credits were going, I was like, oh, I better do a little web search for a thing that I wanted to talk about on the show. And then as I hit search, then the credits went, and I'm like, oh. It was so much easier in the past when I was just a caveman and we were sitting around a fire talking. I could host a show like that.
Are you as old as Methuselah, Captain?
I am. I am an immortal man. Can you imagine being immortal and looking like this?
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to live forever, but no one will kiss me.
You would
Lobo,
make immortal.
We're both old enough to talk about an ancient show called Manimal. You can look it up later.
We're talking Manimal today. I like to bring up now and again examples of ridiculous fandom. And there was a bit they used to do on God, what do you call it? Robot Chicken, where there's the angry kid who wants Hollywood to make a movie about the GoBots.
Oh yeah. Oh, GoBots. I remember I don't throw many tantrums growing up. I remember my brother threw my mom a tantrum when she was like, look at GoBots, it's cheaper. Like, no, we don't get laughed at the playground, Ma. You don't understand.
She didn't want to spring all the way for the Transformer.
Yeah.
She was like, look, the GoBots are 3 for $1.
Hey, Transform.
All right, gentlemen. Here we are, ready to tackle probably one of my favorite storylines in all of Star Trek. And there are many storylines I love. But this one is from Deep Space Nine. And this is what they call the Emissary trilogy. We are beginning that. And the idea is that Benjamin Sisko, Commander Benjamin Sisko, who is grieving the loss of his wife. He's raising his son alone now. His wife very recently died at this point in Star Trek lore. And he's still not happy with this assignment where basically a Cardassian space station called Terok Nor is taken over by the Federation and the planet that it used to be part of enslaving, which is Bajor. And that's Deep Space Nine. Commander Sisko is put in charge of Deep Space Nine, and he's in this very weird political situation. And just the cherry on the sundae in his very difficult life, and it is a very difficult life at this point for Sisko, is that he is recognized as the emissary of the prophets for the planet of Bajor. Even more complicated is the fact that there's a wormhole that just pretty much suddenly introduces itself when he gets there. And it's part of a prophecy that when the emissary comes, the doorway will open to the celestial temple. and the prophets live in the celestial temple. In Starfleet terms, and we do hear it in this episode, and I love how the Bajorans are like, okay, whatever. You think there are aliens inside the wormhole. It's clearly the prophets who live in the celestial temple, but whatever. I love that attitude. And he has spoken with them, Sisko. Sisko is recognized by the prophets / aliens who live in the wormhole. And we also learn in the very first episode of the series, which is called The Emissary, we learn that Sisko is, he has a relationship with them, and they do not perceive time the way we perceive time. That will actually come up in this episode. They are nonlinear in terms of time, nonlinear beings. Okay.
Nonlinear, man.
So let me ask you fellas, you gentlemen, Craig, let me start with you. How did you feel about Deep Space Nine as a Star Trek viewer?
So for me, it was a couple things going on. It was the 90s. My wife and I had just gotten married. So here we are, a mixed couple living up in upstate New York, an outdoor education center. That was our first job that we got together. Don't even ask, but that's what we were doing.
Okay.
And we're in a situation where we stand out, right?
Yeah.
And here this show comes on, and I see this, I see Avery Brooks, who I'd seen Spencer for Hire beforehand. And here he is in this show. And I was like, wow, this is intriguing. And I then saw Emissary for the first time with a bunch of people. And I'm like, oh my God, they made him Space Jesus. That's actually an interesting thing.
Yeah.
And I wasn't one of those people who's like, oh, this is Dark Trek. I was like, but that's interesting, because the first show was all about the loss of his wife and his son and all this stuff too. And in fact, he didn't like Picard. I was like, wow, this is interesting. It's a different take on it. Let me give it a chance. I do remember the first season being kind of weak on some of the episodes, were really rough, but I enjoyed the first one. And by the second season, there's an episode, I think it was called Duet, with Kira and this ex-Cardassian war criminal. That's what the show turned for me, because that could have been a 2-act play off Broadway somewhere. It was just two people going at each other and then changing perspective as you go through, right? And that's when the show really started fleshing out for me. The characters are deeper. So that's my run on it. I thought it was a different take. I was intrigued, and I wasn't disappointed. Well, with the exception of some of the really terrible episodes in the first season.
I am Tosk. Yeah, I always like to list Tosk as one of my least favorite episodes, but it really, in looking back on it, wasn't even that bad. Flobo, how did you feel about Deep Space Nine? Now, let me ask very quickly. We were all living in New York, at least New York State. In your case, Craig, at the time. I remember seeing the show like on Sunday nights. Does that sound right? I think
it was Sunday nights at 7:00, if memory serves.
Yeah, because TNG was Saturday night, I believe, right? So
that's right. That's right.
TJ was Saturday and Deep Space was Sunday.
Do you remember which station?
11 WPIX.
Yeah, WPIX. Upstate New York, it was WPIX.
Yeah,
that's true. I went to college. Yeah, I went to college in upstate New York, and that's how I knew PIX. And so, like, people were like, "You know PIX?" I'm like, "Yeah. Sure."
It's a superstation like TBS or WGN.
Right? Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
So you can get PIX like Dominican Republic. It's crazy.
and if you were watching The Honeymooners, if you were watching, I always loved. It was usually like Memorial Day weekend or maybe 4th of July weekend. They would do the Twilight Zone marathon.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was a very hip station. I loved it. I remember watching it Sunday nights, late Sunday night. I think there was a rebroadcast.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, it always gives me such a great feeling to watch the shows now. That was a great time in my life. So I love remembering that. Oh, of course. Yes. If you were a student of The Odd Couple, thank you, Griffin Pitcher. I'm sorry, Chris Pitcher. Great. I just outed everything about
You
Chris.
out him every time. It's like, whoops. You're like, I am not Batman. Don't tell anyone I'm Batman because you be the
You
worst.
got it, Bruce Wayne.
No.
Flobo Voice, let me ask you how you felt, because this is really interesting to me. You've got a very different kind of, as Craig says, a very different kind of story being told on Deep Space Nine. And Avery Brooks is the new captain. He was a commander at the beginning of the series, of course. How did you feel about Deep Space Nine?
Back then or now?
Back then. Well, was there a back then? Were you?
Oh yeah.
very
So
much
because
aware?
it was, we didn't have cable, right? It was definitely both Star Treks, TNG and Deep Space Nine were kind of slow, right? They're kind of like, this is not for me. It's boring. But whereas TNG had the connotation of, my mom, when she was working on her master's, she brought her friend over because she had a word processor.
Oh yeah.
And they would type up their thesis in the word processor. So I remember seeing TNG in the background. DS9 was like, there's more of them? Like, it became like a running joke. And if you remember, The Simpsons at that time were making jokes about that too, saying, Star Trek, so very, very tired. Like, how many Star Trek series are we going to have? So I know even less of DS9 as a kid. But going back on it now as an adult, until Burnham, and that's why I said it, Sisko's my favorite captain, because DS9 has a lot more stories to tell. Now I'll get a chance to watch it and digest it as I should.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's the thing.
And Flowball, I started watching a little bit more Discovery now that I kind of hacked my way into Paramount for a while, and I'm beginning to, I see the appeal of Berman now. I disagree with some of the choices, the little details they're making, but I actually like the actress and what she's trying to do with the character. So everybody come at me.
Please come at him.
I don't want to. I don't want to be mean to my wife on the show. My wife does not like Burnham.
It's okay.
And it's the acting.
No, perfect.
It's purely the acting that she did not love. And I hear exactly what you're saying, Greg, in terms of the choices. She's making choices. And it's funny being an actor and being so old like I am now, because now I'm at the point of like, you do what you do. Go ahead. I remember being a young man and being like, William Shatner is one of the worst actors on the planet. We must make him stop. And now I'm like, I could look back on those old episodes and I'm like, the one fun thing about this episode is William Shatner's acting. I could totally come around and appreciate that. I think the interesting thing about this episode, particularly, is they had kind of put it in their hip pocket that Sisko is the emissary. It gets mentioned a bit, but he's never called to be the emissary until this episode. Now it's quite serious. So let's get to the plot. The plot is that the Cardassians, who used to be the space Nazis who basically attacked and enslaved Bajor, they left quite a while ago at this point. So it's like 2-3 years. And the Cardassians and Bajor both want to be part of the Federation. So they're doing a lot to cooperate with the Federation and do things very Starfleet. And one of the things they're going to do is they're going to try to establish a communications satellite array that goes through the wormhole to Gamma Quadrant, right? Gamma Quadrant? Help me out here.
Yes, that's it.
And the wormhole, of course, is cutting, millions of light years out of the journey. So they're getting this direct connection to this unknown space. They don't know very much about the Gamma Quadrant. But at this point in Deep Space Nine, they do know about the Dominion. I didn't do a whole lot of research on that, but they do mention the Dominion.
In the season premiere of that season, I believe the Dominion kamikaze a Galaxy class starship in front of Sisko. So,
oh man,
that's kind of a hello, we're here.
Right.
Very hardcore. Yeah, yeah. As they're trying to establish this, there is this Vedic, who's a holy man of the Bajoran people. And he comes to Deep Space Nine and he says, look, there's a prophecy, and this is the prophecy unwinding. And it's a terrible prophecy.
They always are, am I right? Jeez. No one's ever like, we'll get snow cones at the end of the day. It's always like doom and gloom.
Good point. And it does call upon the emissary. The emissary does play a big part in this prophecy, and that is okay. Now it's on the doorstep. Now Sisko has to face being the emissary. Not only that, but his top Bajoran officer, Kira Nerys, is very religious. And so now we have to answer the question, do you believe that your boss, Commander Sisko, is the emissary? They have a great conversation about this. And it really, I have my own thoughts, but I wondered what you guys thought about this idea of suddenly finding out that you are a religious icon to a planet you've never been to before this assignment. How does this, what does this do to the character of Sisko, do you think? Let's start with you, Flobo.
Oh man, so it's interesting for Sisko, but I thought it was interesting coming from Kira's perspective, right? Like we always say, and I don't mean to be sacrilegious on a Sunday, y'all, but if Jesus came back today, the actual Jesus, would we even accept him as Jesus, right? Because we're just so conceited in our own thing. So this idea of like, is he, isn't he? I don't know. You would assume probably emissaries also looks a certain way, not trying to put race into anything, but it doesn't look that way. So having that and having her accept that and her accepting it, saying it to her colleagues, and then just broaching it with her boss, to me is way more interesting. But to answer your question, look, man, I'm Sisko. I'm just a normal guy who troubles and struggles to raise a kid. I don't really know about leading y'all to like at Babylon or anything like that. So that was kind of fun too. But definitely the Kira side was more interesting for me.
Yeah. Craig, how are you feeling about this for the character? It's funny that they've gotten this far into the third season without really doing a whole lot of emissary stuff, and then they take it head on.
Right. I kind of agree with what Flo was saying. I thought the dynamic between Kira and Sisko was really good. I mean, she even says he's my boss and he's also my Jesus figure. Wow. And the fact that she told him, I thought was really great. Yeah. And the way he reacted, like he's like, hey, I'm just a guy, but thank you. It was good to see that dynamic. Now, how do you deal with that? This is somebody, someone under my command, and I'm their religious icon. Right. Man, that's rough. And plus let's not forget the stress of the Dominion is starting to escalate.
Right.
So the stress of command. Right. And so now he's also this. So it was, I thought it was handled on both sides really well. And it made it interesting. It made it more of a character study show now. Forget about, the Vipers and, the Taka and emissions flowing through the wormhole and the comets. It came down to that dynamic and it made it interesting. That was my thoughts.
Can I jump on what Craig was saying? It's almost like, and I know my crazy analogies will get the show in trouble, but it reminds me a lot, because I'm a big fan of it, the CSI franchise. Yeah. You had one that was just about the science. You had one that was more action adventure. And CSI New York was more character driven. It was like, my wife died here. Yeah. My husband comes from there. And it was kind of this cool way of, you get your science, you get the crime, but it's just different interpretations. This would make DS9 so great,
You're absolutely right, both of you, because this is a very character-heavy episode. Lots and lots of conversations, lots and lots of people keeping their cards close to the vest until they lay the cards on the table. It happens quite a bit in this episode, and this, I know other Star Treks have been like this, but this one had more urgency to it, I think, because as we're saying, we do find out that Commander Sisko is this savior figure for the Bajorans. He is a huge space Jesus figure for them. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the Vipers. So the Cardassian scientists are brought in, and I'm gonna run to the cast list. Here we go.
Yep.
We've got Gilora and we've got Ulani. The wonderful actress Wendy Roby, who's a great character actor, playing Ulani. Tracy Scoggins plays.
Yes.
And is it a hard G? Is it Gilora or Gilora?
Galore. It's Galore.
Yeah, because I'm like Gloria while I'm watching it.
I was thinking about the James Bond girl Galore, but that Galore, that works too.
Oh, Galore.
Yeah.
We won't say the first name. Ding.
On a Sunday, y'all. No,
they show up on Deep Space Nine, and everybody's very polite. And we do get this. I'm not sure how many female Cardassians we've ever seen in Star Trek up to this point. So what we learn from them is that they're scientists and that they're not very political. They really don't care that much about being part of the Cold War between Bajor, the Starfleet, and them on Cardassia. We do know that the Cardassians are a very militaristic, very violent group. I don't want to say race because now I'm being racist, but I guess I'm being racist.
It won't be the first time. I'm kidding. Don't clip this out. We're all a bit racist. I'm just.
Flobo keeps me honest. It's not his full-time job. He doesn't even get paid, but he does keep me honest. I really, really appreciate it. Galora, especially, I really got to get into this. Were you guys aware of Tracy Scoggins? Had Tracy Scoggins ever come? Craig,
yes.
Yeah. Tell us what you know about Tracy. What do you know about Tracy Scoggins?
She was, I liked her as an actress, attractive woman, and she played. My God, she played in everything from the Babylon 5 spinoff called Crusade. I don't know if you guys ever saw that. Yeah. She was good in that. She played in a couple of 80s cop dramas. I can't remember, guys. I was a little too young for that, but I remember her as being an actress that I liked. She was an attractive woman. Yeah. And I remember, and that was the first time I remember seeing a Cardassian female. Back the few times they had a few. Wow, she's pretty cute. And then the fact she had this thing with O'Brien, I thought was kind of interesting. And the fact that we find out too that the Cardassian women are the scientists and the engineers, and the men don't have a mind for her. She states. So I thought that was cool.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting division. Had you known anything about Tracy Scoggins, Flobo?
No, but I did now. I mean, sheesh. I was like, okay, how about that? I mean, yeah, she's a little sexist, but besides that, my name is Flobo.
Tracy Scoggins, if you remember the days when we used to talk about Skinamax, when Cinemax would do their late night movies that were always like, I'm a detective, but you have to see my boobs, so here they are. But I'm a detective. She was in so much science fiction. And one of my favorite credits was she played Kathy Bonin, Craig. She played Kathy Bonin on Manimal. One episode. She did a lot of different shows, but they were called, yes, as you said, cop shows. She was on TJ Hooker. She was on Blue Thunder. She was on Mike Hammer. But she was on such crappy TV. She was on the Highlander TV series. Ugh. She was New Adventures of Superman, Lois and Clark. She did 21 episodes as Cat Grant, Flobo.
I believe that.
Yeah. I remember. I remember. I mean, yes, I do remember that. I forgot about that. But yes.
This is like an unlocked memory.
Yes.
Yes. There you go.
And yes, a lot of Babylon 5 work. And just, I have to say, let's talk about this episode as you already started, Craig. Let's get into this thing with O'Brien. O'Brien, we have heard on this show refer to Cardassians as the Cardies. The Cardies, which I always thought was kind of like, it's kind of nerf racism right there.
Nerf racism.
It's like racism towards an imaginary race, but it's still racism.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
the House of Dr. Bones there, right? Yeah, yeah, green-blooded goblin. Yeah, yeah, pointy-eared freak. I'm like, damn.
I mean,
Green-blooded hobgoblin.
Listen, damn.
and I do actually kind of appreciate that they have that in Star Trek, because it's like, it's not racism doesn't exist anymore. It's just they've done a lot to, you know, move it away from the main parts of life, but it's still a fringe, you know, approach that people have. So there's the fact, okay, a great moment early on is Galora refers to Deep Space Nine as Terok Nor. So it slips.
Mhm.
You know, like, well, you know, here at Auschwitz, I'm sorry,
Jeez.
this nice part of Germany.
Oh.
Damn.
Yeah.
Little bit of a faux pas there. She is she's fighting with O'Brien. O'Brien is fighting with her. She is like a Cardassian engineer. He's the new engineer of Deep Space Nine, and he's changed a lot, and she does not like what he's done. Some of it is Starfleet specs. Some of it is just he's like the MacGyver guy who, you know, connects things with some chewed up gum.
Right, right.
And they are having some heat. They are having some heat. And Flobo, why are they having heat? What's going on there, especially from Jalora's point of view?
Because there's some sexual tension there, because this dumb brain male specimen is saying, I can do it, and that's obviously foreplay. And so she was like, well, of course you want some of this. And he's like, oh no, particles, I have a hot wife, and got kind of awkward there. But I mean, you've been there, right? Have Cardassians hit you up all the time, asking for a good time? It happens like almost daily.
I'm telling you, if I could go a day without a snake lady hitting on me, I'd be a happy man.
You know what I'm saying?
Is it just me? And it could be. It could be. You guys tell me. Is it just me, or do the Cardassian ladies got some cakes? They put them in those pantsuits, but I'm still like, wow, hello. Well, come on through.
You know me. Every time I get up, I'm like, man, I wish these Cardis be up off her, brother. I'm trying to let a play. But yes, that's what I'm talking about. I can't believe I paused. Like, who is this Cardassian chick? Enter Google. I just.
Oh man, it's so true. You know, that's probably why my browser is so slow right now. Is I should have cleaned all the cookies from the Tracy Scoggins search. That's probably what. Anyway, okay. So we've got this prophecy. The prophecy says 3 vipers will be in the sky. There will be the sword of stars. The celestial temple will be set afire as they peer through the gates. The gates will be pried open. And it's all coming from this Vedic, who we find out, because Captain Sisko does his due diligence and has Odo, the security chief, check up on this Vedic. It turns out he's not a Vedic anymore. He was defrocked for being a little too crazy about the religion. Mm-hmm. What are we talking about in terms of religion? This is the mid-90s. Do you think Star Trek is making a comment about the religious right? Either man, either guest, either fellow.
Oh, it's tough. I mean, it could be that was, the moral majority was coming up at the time, but I would think it was more parallel once again to, Palestinians and Israeli conflict. That was a big deal. If you guys remember back then, that was going off the rails on both sides.
Yeah.
There was a lot of good and there was a lot of bad, and this general, and there was a lot of, we just come off of the Khmer Rouge stuff in Colombia. I know that was the 70s, but that after effect was still happening. They'd found out there were like 1 million people that were killed, more than they thought were killed.
Right.
In the 70s. So that had also come out in the 90s. So there's a lot of that.
There's a reckoning. There's like a social reckoning. And we are finding out things at this point, especially in the 90s, but it still happens to this day where we find out things long after they happen.
Yeah.
Let's get to I'm sorry, I'm running the Ferengi stuff in my head. Am I crazy, or is Quark a funny character? Do you guys like Quark?
It serves a purpose.
Shrug from Flobo. Craig?
It serves a purpose. Like it's wacky. It's like, okay.
I'm a little better on it Flobo, but I can see how he can be annoying, but like compared to Neelix, he's Mother Teresa. But
Yes.
Good boy.
But I thought in this show it was funny. He's trying to sell them alcohol. It all went bad. That was actually kind of funny, I thought.
Right.
I think Quark himself, I never liked too much, but he's got some interesting comments about, there are a couple episodes I remember too, they were talking about Ferengi society, and he's talking to Sisko, and he says, well, we never actually had slavery on Ferenginar. They had indentured servitude, but and they actually had that conversation. So conversations like that, I thought the character was good for, and some stuff about war. But by himself, he could be a little annoying, right? I liked his brother better. I like Nog better. Himself, it depends.
Yeah, I do remember there was a long stretch during these 7 seasons of Deep Space Nine where I would tune in and go, oh, it's a Ferengi episode. Do I want to watch it? Or some of the lines, though. So Dax is talking to Quark, and Dax says, and as the 34th rule of acquisition states, peace is good for business. And Quark says, that's the 35th rule. Oh, you're right. What's the 34th? War is good for business. It's easy to get them confused.
What I
love about this is it points out the amorality of the Ferengi and the fact that, we're not in Federation space necessarily anymore. We are outside of, the great what do they call it? The gay communist ultra luxury society. That's like a nickname given to the Federation. You've never heard that, Flobo?
No, I've learned something new today. What was it called
again? I'm quoting it all wrong, but it's basically it's gay, it's communist, and there's like so much luxury. There's like so much plenty.
Wow.
And that's like a way of looking at, how accepting and how open the Federation is, because we have to remember not everywhere
gay space communism. Is that a thing?
Hey man, it's you know what it is? It's making fun of the complainers. It's making fun of the guys who are like, this isn't my Trek. Where are the big fist fights? And how come the white guys don't always run everything? It's that. It's that
question I've never asked.
So I remember that was the thing, the way that Tuvok shocked the world. Sisko actually had caused a little bit of tension when he first started, and
there was something beautiful. I mean, I don't know how you guys felt, but I always felt there was something kind of beautiful about how they grew everything out of Sisko. Because then Cassidy Yates eventually is brought into the series, and so he's got a romantic interest, and she's this space freighter. She drives a space truck or something, but she's really cool. Played by Penny Johnson, one of my favorite actors from 24 and from Larry Sanders Show,
and Orville.
Oh, yeah, that's right. She's on Orville. Well, there's an interesting connection, of course, between Star Trek and Orville, but also between this episode and Orville, which is Renee Echevarria. Renee Echevarria is given a lot of credit on this episode. I don't know if you guys read this part of it. This episode was written by David S. Cohen and Martin A. Weiner. These are not staff writers for Star Trek. These are outsiders who basically sent in a spec script. And I believe this is one of the few spec scripts up to this point that had been produced on Deep Space Nine.
Okay, that makes sense. Because like when I was coming up and writing, I was like, oh man, submit a spec script to a show. You get to be on it. And that's totally not the case anymore. But it makes sense that like this one feels so different. Now got picked up.
Exactly. It is a big gear change. And one of the reasons why they bought the script was because they liked so much the idea of, yeah, let's talk more about Cisco being the emissary. And it turned into a great storyline. Of course, that's why we're doing the Emissary trilogy for this week and the next 2 weeks here on Starbase 80. Let me get you guys. Okay, so a third Cardassian shows up, and she's not as much fun as the first two. Were you suspecting her from the very beginning that she might be Obsidian Order? I believe that's.
Yeah, it's Obsidian. It looked a little obvious. I mean, she came in and like, I'm not the bad person. I mean, and the way they were reacting, it's I don't. You guys tell me. It looked a little. They were leading us a bit.
Yeah, there was a lot of code there, like when Quark is really trying to kiss Cardassian ass here. He's really trying to bring Cardassians back because, well, more profit. And so he brings them a big, like, poo-poo platter of Cardassian food. And she is totally into it. The third one who showed up is totally into it. The first two are like, yeah, we don't really like Rogova eggs and Tojal in yamak sauce.
The accent. Yeah, really? We don't do these. Oh, for real.
The thing that I love is the names of these foods are kind of disgusting. So you don't even really have to see them to know how gross they are.
And they won't show you either. That budget's out the craziness. But no, to answer your question, let's jump in there. I thought it'd be the opposite. I thought it'd been. I was looking for the red herring of, oh, this person's definitely the third Viper. Oh wait, it's us assuming. But I'm glad it kind of got me that Occam's razor of, yep, if they're creepy, they're probably creepy.
And that third Viper, that third Cardassian is Dejar. We find out as we try to get this experiment running, there is, of course, they're on their hands and knees in this sort of like, service shaft in the Defiant. Mm-hmm. And that's where the really awkward conversation happens between the chief and Galora. Is it okay? So they're having this conversation, and then the chief's like, I've got to get past you. And so she does this like, woo, she does this little thing where she gets out of his way. And then on his hands and knees, he crawls past her and she looks right at his butt. Am I the only one who saw that?
I'm glad you're the only one that saw that.
Yes, same here.
Seriously? Man, I must be looking way too much into this. I should be writing erotic fan fiction.
No, I do remember that, unfortunately. But yes, she was checking him out.
That's awkward. Then something goes terribly wrong. So this giant comet, which they're calling the Sword of Stars, and it's a great moment where actually Kira sees it and goes, oh man, that comet, that's the Sword of Stars that we heard about in the prophecy. Mm. It makes sense, does it not, that these prophecies, this is pointed out by Sisko himself, I think. These prophecies are coming from, they were given to Bajorans, ancient Bajorans, from the prophets. The prophets are beings that don't know time. So it's actually perfectly explainable that they might know the future and tell it to someone. Oh yeah, this thing's going to happen. And
they do talk about that. Both Kira and Sisko talk about that very thing, that it's been handed down, it's been translated, it's been misnomer. And just an interesting nerdy note, our perception of time as humans, really, there's no scientific basic for it in physics, right? We perceive time, sure, but that's us, our perception of time.
Right.
Time from a physics perspective is just it's just a dimension. It doesn't really, you go forward and go faster. I won't go into the whole details, but our perception of time is not as concrete and is universal as we think. It's based on us. It's humans.
Interesting.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, go ahead, Flobo.
Well, allow me to nerd out too. Talking about time. So I was reading this article about how they took crickets, those are the ones that scream or whatever, and they recorded their chirps and they slow it down relative to their size, and it kind of sounds like songs. So like to them, they live that fast life, and that's what they're doing. But to us, it's just like you know what I mean? It's kind of cool. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, it's like we have hummingbirds out where I live, and I'm sure they don't think they're fast.
A Lazy Hummingbird is a dope show title.
Me am talk smart too. Me am idiot. Okay, well, we're kind of winding up here, so let's get to the end of this episode. It turns out this new third Cardassian is actually not a scientist at all. She is a saboteur. Ugh. And it makes sense. They actually like do kind of a Scooby-Doo, like, aha, you're a saboteur because the Obsidian Order never wanted this peace treaty and this efforts of cooperation, and we're gonna turn you in. Little too neat, or is it just me?
I wasn't familiar with the property. I was like, but this is the first time they mentioned Obsidian Order. That's cheap as hell. To be like, haha, we all knew this. We did. You can't do that. Play fair. Give us clues.
I do agree. The only saving grace is later on, Flo, was that the City Order becomes really a deep part lore of the show. But yeah, it was kind of like, oh, they're these guys, and yeah, we caught them. What?
Surprise!
It was Mr. Wilson, and I would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for you meddling Ferengi. I'm kidding. The Ferengi had nothing to do with helping it out in this episode. We basically see that the prophecy did come true. The three Vipers were not the Cardassians. It was this comet that they tried to destroy that they ended up breaking into three pieces, and Sisko and Kira. So Sisko's like, well, I'm going to get into a shuttle pod, which is basically the space version of a Ford Focus.
Hey, why not, man? They get pretty zippy. Go around.
He's going to guide these giant pieces of comet through the wormhole, so they don't destroy. They don't, because they're filled with no, it's not selenium. They're filled with a brand with MacGuffinite. They're filled.
No, it's silithium. Silithium.
Yeah.
That's.
Yeah,
why do I remember that? I can't remember. I put my keys 2 minutes ago.
So this unique properties of this element actually create a filament through the wormhole that connects the communications display. So everything's okay.
Yep.
Little too pat. What did you think of that ending, Craig?
The Obsidian Order reveal annoyed me, but that part did not, because it fell into the props, because remember, it says it opened up, the Sword of Stars will open up the gates, will burn open the gates of the temple.
Yeah.
I said, okay, that's kind of cool, right? Because it just meant that they had this communication array. And so I thought that was fine.
Yeah. Flobo?
I kind of went over my head, man. I was like, what the hell's the wormhole? Is it like a highway? Is it a trash can? Like, what is it? Like, put the wormhole, will be fine. Okay. But hey, if it solves the problem, then fine.
Yeah, it's weird, Flo, because the wormhole, it's the home for these space aliens, and it's also a transport hub.
Yeah.
I know, it's both. It's two things.
It's the place where the aliens live, but it's also like the 1 and the 3 train. It's like
it's like the Jersey Turnpike. I live on the Turnpike over there.
But once again, that weird dynamic of letting people go through your home, it comes to play really well.
It does
in the upcoming war. It does. So if you it does. It's like, that fact doesn't. They don't. What I like about this show, these weird things they kind of throw out there, they don't seem to forget them. They actually come into play and have consequences later on.
It is
Yeah.
hard back then.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Because there were really good writers on this series. I mean, look, you can point to great writing on all the series, but this one did have a lot of people that are like, we're going to stick to canon. We're going to build on what we have. We're going to not throw away anything we established. That's one of the many reasons I love DS9. By the time we get to the end, we realize that this prophecy came true. I wanted to ask you guys this as I was watching this episode. Do you personally have a sense of destiny? And have you always had a sense of that, or did you have it and lost it? Yeah, Craig, you're our guest. How do you feel about destiny? How do you feel about the whole concept of things being predestined?
God, I'm too much of a technocrat to actually be that much into it. That'd be a question for my wife more than me, but I do believe that people have the opportunity to make differences in whether it's in your own little life and stuff like that too. Is there a manifest destiny drawn by something? Not really, but in the context of the show, knowing what these what the prophets are in this case, yes, I could see it being there too. But in general, I really don't believe in a manifest destiny. I believe in opportunities and working together and that type of thing. I'm not really that much of more of a pragmatist when it comes to that stuff.
Flobo, you mentioned it before. It's Sunday. Are you feeling the spirits?
Let me get one of these invisible hits right now. See, I feel like destiny is a current. So if you do nothing, you're probably what path you have is iron for you, but you can swim upstream, you can jump out, you can, get an SUV and go elsewhere. So I feel like, because sometimes when I have a bad day, I pour coffee in my lap or I forget my keys. I'm like, what's going on? And then something else happens. I'm like, oh, but if I go, I'm staying inside, I ain't going out there, then it kind of changes it. You know what I mean?
I'm exactly the same way. I was a preacher's kid, so I grew up with all kinds of Bible and all kinds of prophecy and big man upstairs and guiding hand and
I had that too.
Did you?
Go ahead.
He's like, I'm a Democrat. Yeah.
And just this whole sense of there is some intelligence higher than ours that helps shape things, that helps guide things. And then I stopped believing at one point in my life, and then I started believing again because it just made more sense than nothingness. So I'm spiritually always going back and forth. I guess I'm kind of grateful to DS9 for giving us some kind of religion that actually works.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Does it work because you're seeing it from a objective standpoint? Like, if you grew up having to go to a church, going to Bajor church, you wouldn't appreciate Bajor religion on DS9. Is it fun because it's not attached to any kind of lore, mythology? I don't know how to say this.
And before I answer that question, we're going to say hi to Craig Robinson, who said hi earlier, and I didn't put it up. But
how dare you?
Craig says, "Real deep, guys. Appreciate your different views." I mean, there's reasons to talk about Star Trek, and this is one of them. I think what I love about this is they give a reason for the religion to exist. It's a long tradition on Bajor, but also Bajor has suffered so much. And they kept their spirituality as an important part of their survival. And that's, do you think that the use of religion in Deep Space Nine was probably unique to Deep Space Nine, and that it actually helps shape characters? Because it does, when we first meet Kira in Deep Space Nine, she is chip on the shoulder, pain in the butt. She is so opposed to Sisko. She's so opposed to the Federation. A very unlikable main character. Sisko himself is so shaped by his own loss of his wife, his own tragedies, the fact that he doesn't want to be there. And I wonder, tell me what you think about this. I think religion actually softens these characters and makes these characters more personal to us. Flobo?
Yeah, same thing. I think we got a little bit of a slice of that on like other shows. Usually they go to a planet, they think something, and by the general order one or prime directive, they ignore that prime directive and then teach them something about American culture and then leave, right? But now we have nuance. We actually have the nuance between the religious leaders and stuff like that. That I think having a show that doesn't have the big sets and you have to fill time with that about a religious conflict allows you that. But in TOS, it kind of felt like they're weird. They wear funny hats. Bye. You know what I mean? See you next week.
Craig, yeah, I mean that's an excellent point, Flobo. Do you feel that the religion and the religious aspects of Deep Space Nine actually made the series successful or made it last 7 seasons?
I did, because it paralleled religious teachings, in our world. Like I always felt that the Bajorans reminded me of Israelis or Karatites, or that type of sort of nomad, Jewish icon, tradition, prophecy, and interacting with the world and dealing with great oppression, and how that religion kind of helps people uplift. And I do believe it helps Sisko, and it did help Kira, and helped with some of the other characters as well. And it also allowed them to really, throw in the science fiction element too. So the manifestation of a religious, of miracles. Miracles were spiritual, and also they literally were, we have a time crystal, right? Things like that. So I liked that play between this sort of spiritual and science fiction aspect. I thought it was handled well. An example, another show that tried to do it and didn't do it very well was Babylon 5, if you remember.
Right.
They had, that was kind of, I know, Flobo, you guys ever seen that? It was kind of ham-fisted and obvious.
Oh, no, I've seen a couple of episodes. Yeah,
and the acting on that, that's a whole other conversation. But I thought this was handled well, and I did think it improved the show and improved the characters.
Gentlemen, we are just about ready to wind up this episode. Flobo Boyce, do you have any? Yes,
I do have notes, but I was saying what Craig Robinson wrote. I agree. Now, I didn't know much about the Klingon. Craig says, I don't know if you have audio versions, but the different shows, the Klingon faith and religion, like in Discovery. When I saw that made sense. Growing up, seeing Warp on TV is like, why is the black character always getting his ass kicked? But seeing this like warlike class having a down period, trying to go into their own houses and see how they can come back to the old glory, that I can associate with. But to answer your question, I have tabs and notes. Captain, what you want to hear first?
Let me hear your notes.
Cool, man. This is a cool episode. I was like, wow, 2 Vipers, can't be a third. Oh, wait, there is. Who knew? Plot twist, the emissary is actually a man called Hawk. I'll say it before and I'll say it again. Hey, Kira, what up, girl? Oh, you believe in prophecies? Oh, never mind, girl. I'm agnostic. And if a Cardassian woman asks me out, I'll try it out. Ain't nothing wrong with that. You know what I'm saying, player? And finally, the Assibian order. You mean black? Nah. And that's what I figured out this week. Watching DS9. It was great. It was a great episode.
How was the Obsidian Order never a pro wrestling stable?
No idea.
With like Ron Simmons in it. How did that never happen? Craig, did you have any loose notes or observations you wanted to throw in?
I also had a very similar, comment about, I don't mind if a Cardassian hits on me. Female, that's not a problem. And I thought that the whole wormhole physics stuff, this is just me being complete nerds. Like, I really have to stop listening to them talk to technobabble. I just have to stop, because to my ears, it's like, oh, okay, fine.
Right.
Wizard did it. A wizard did it.
That's how I feel about Big Bang Theory. He's right.
All right, gentlemen, I'm just gonna take it out on this nice, beautiful laugh. Thank you so much for being on the show, Craig Lubin. Flobo Boyce, if people want to follow you on the social medias and maybe throw some money your way, how would they do it?
Patreon.com/FloboBoyce. Hey!
The music's too loud. I'm so sorry. You're
what? I said the music's too loud.
Thank you for being on the show. and I still have no idea what I'm doing.
never
Thank you,
knew.
Greg. Thank you, Flomo. Thank you for